I'm Jean. I'm 68 years of age, grew up in Greenhill, but I've lived up on the hill now for 40 odd years. So,
I'm Rose, and I'm the artist, a Swansea-born artist who's been working in Wine Community Centre with the local community for the last 4 months. And I'm here to talk to Jean about growing up in and around Wine. So first off, Jean, is it Wine or Warnwen?
Warnwen,
is it?
Warnwen it is, yes.
So you're living up here on Mayhill now?
Yeah.
Which is right next to Warnwen.
Of course it is, yes.
But growing up, you were...
I lived in Greenhill.
Well, so what was it like living there on Lion Street?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I haven't got a bad word to say about Greenhill. I mean, the community was just fantastic. You know, you knew... A lot of it as well was because a lot of my family lived down there.
Yeah.
I couldn't walk along the street and not bump into an auntie or an uncle or a cousin. And I think that's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
You knew everyone knew you, they knew what family you come from, so you couldn't get into any trouble because they would be, you know, I'll be telling your father. And that is what I loved about Greenhill. It was a fantastic community. I got no bad memories of being a child growing up in Greenhill was quite a poor area,
yeah,
you know?
It was.
But I can't imagine what it must have been like to be a woman.
Yeah.
Living with no facilities, really. Do you know, when I think of what we've got now, you know, my mother had 10 children. How do you wash and dry and... Do you know, for 10 children?
Mm.
And I'm not taking away from men, but men back then did not participate in housekeeping, did they?
No, not at all.
They worked,
No.
Women did it all, and I just think, oh my God, how hard a life, a grueling life, you know, for women it must have been. And no wonder women died young.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
So
mean?
many,
Because they
yeah.
were knackered, let's be honest about it.
Both our mothers.
Yeah,
Both our
exactly.
mothers went young.
I mean, my mother was only 37 when she died.
Yeah, my mother was 47.
You know, 10 children.
Yeah. And all that work.
And then all that work, and you think, well, no wonder, because, oh my Lord.
And growing up, they grew up in...
Worse circumstances than us.
Worse.
Yeah.
Recession, the Big Depression in the 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, they were malnourished.
Oh, and I remember my father telling me how he had no shoes. My father went to school barefoot.
Yeah, many kids did. My uncle and his
Do you know what I
family
mean?
did, yeah.
So, you know, we think we might... Well, I don't think I had it hard. Yeah, looking back now. But at the time, I didn't. I always had shoes on my feet.
Yeah.
I always had a hot meal.
Yeah.
We always had I mean, I had friends who would go home from school to jam sandwiches.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, I will say that we did always have a hot meal.
There was always a pot of stew.
Always, yeah.
Even if it was no meat.
There was always some
sometimes
bones,
would
wasn't it?
just
They'd
be
use, yeah. Bones from the...
and lentils.
Yes,
Lentil soup.
yes,
Still love lentil soup.
I mean,
Lentil
still
soup
make it
with a
now.
couple of onions in it.
Still
and
make it now,
so
yeah.
cheap.
Yeah, definitely.
And that got a lot of families through.
Oh, they were wonderful times for children. Terrible times, I think, for women.
Yeah.
And for my father, terrible times, because he had 10 children. He worked. Because again, in those days, to be on the dole was shameful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, my father, you know, people used to say to my father, why are you working? You're bringing up 10 children on your own. And he always said, I wouldn't have any self-esteem if I had to go down and sign on. So he worked all his life up until he had, you know, a heart attack. Back then, we didn't expect as much from life, did we?
No.
As the youngsters do today.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you had clean clothes and a meal on the table, like, who went abroad then, Rose?
Oh, no. We all
No
went to
one.
Swansea
I had
Beach.
one friend who went abroad to Egypt, And I used to listen to her for hours talking. She was one of the rich people from Greenhill, you know.
There weren't that many.
They weren't that many, but her parents owned a shop.
Ah, right.
So they were quite
Yeah.
wealthy, you know.
Yeah.
And she went to Egypt, and oh my gosh, I used to dream of going there. No, after listening to her telling us about it.
Yeah.
But you never thought it would ever happen, did you? You know,
No.
that it would actually go abroad somewhere. Or it's crazy.
And everything was second hand.
Oh yeah, this is what I'm saying about today and then. We didn't expect what they expect everything today, don't they?
Yeah.
And I'm not, because I think that's great. Why should you
Yeah.
accept less? But I think back then we didn't expect to have all these wonderful things, did we?
And certainly not everything new.
No, everything you had, as
Yeah.
you rightly say, was second hand.
Yeah.
And, well, did it bother, you know?
I used to go diving in skips a bit. You got a better class
My
of
father
skip in
was.
those days.
My father would come home from work, right, and he'd say, I got a new pair of shoes for you. He'd seen them when he was walking to work. Someone had put them out for the rubbish.
Yeah.
And anything like, oh, we'll have a bit of that. We'd take that home, and it's funny. Funny times, man, because I remember once the nuns came to visit the house and they gave him a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Nuns' shoes they were.
Right.
So it was a case of, right, who do they fit? You didn't have a choice, did it?
No. No.
You know, it wasn't a case I don't like him, Dad. Well, we'd all like this thinking, please don't let them fit me. Well, they fitted Georgie. So she had to wear them. They had a big, which might be quite fashionable later on, they had a big block heel like that on them.
Oh.
And in the end, she threw them over the wall. My father searched the whole house because I don't know where they gone, Dad. She said they've disappeared. Yeah, she'd thrown them over the wall.
That's naughty.
Oh gosh, yeah,
I mean, it's
funny
interesting,
times.
isn't it, that when you think back, right, we would go pulling things out of skips, picking up stuff that was put out for the rubbish,
Yeah,
going to jumble sales, because
Yeah.
that was before car boot
Yeah.
sales, and we recycled everything. Now it's very fashionable to recycle,
it is
and
now.
it's thought of
Mm.
as being environmentally friendly.
Yes, of course it is.
If you want to be a friend
Yeah.
of the environment, you know,
You
make to
recycle,
amend
yeah,
is
yeah,
coming back.
definitely,
Recycle is going out.
definitely.
But that's how we lived.
That's how
as
we
the
always
norm.
lived.
You
That
know,
was
if you
our
were
life.
working class then, you didn't have
You
an
didn't
option.
have new.
So it's interesting that as working class kids in working class families then, we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But for the wrong
Well,
reasons. It
yes,
was poverty.
of course it was poverty, definitely. But for me it was just a wonderful, and I got to say, up here is a great community.
Yeah.
You know, and I think all the big working class, Blenheim Ice, Georgie lived in Blenheim Ice, and she'll say to this day, it's the best place she ever lived, because people helped you, you knew everyone, you could call on any of your neighbours at any time, and I think that's a working class thing.
I don't know how you feel, but I think that working class communities get a bad press.
Oh, they get a terrible press, and I think up here, Blenheim Ice, probably especially, and honestly, I worked in the local shop up here for 10 years, and you won't get better people.
Yeah.
You won't get better people than up here. And yes, we've got our baddies, like every community,
Everywhere.
but you won't get better people than are living up here. They go out of their way for you, they love, well, I liken it to Greenhill in a way. You know, their families are their lives, and you know, it's I think working class communities are brilliant. I'm proudly working class, I have to be honest. My father was, and I think that we all are really, because we see the struggle.
Because I think there's a lot of people would say there's no such thing as class anymore.
Oh,
there's no such thing as
that's
working
a joke.
class. Yeah.
That is a joke, I'm sorry. There is still a working class, and for me, working class, I think how I would define it is, if you got to work this week to live next week, you working class.
Yeah. Yeah.
End of.
Yeah.
You know, it's you know, if you don't have to work for 6 months and you're all right, then then you're middle class, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know? But it's silly to say it don't exist, because it certainly does. I've got to say a lot of what I would class as working class jobs are, as they've always been, very lowly paid.
Yeah.
Because for some reason they don't seem to think we need the same amount of money as other people.
No.
We are worth a lot more than people have ever given us credit for. And I think this pandemic will change.
Yeah?
Yes, I do. Because I do think that people have seen the reality of how little working class people are thought of. And I do believe it will change things.
I hope
I do.
so. I hope so.
Yeah, I do. I think working class people won't put up with it no more. No.
Somebody said to me, I was talking to someone who was an artist, another artist, and quite young, you know, only sort of early 30s. And she said to me, well, I don't know anyone working class. I said, yes, you do.
Of course you do.
And she said, oh, well, it never occurred to me that
No.
people like you could be. I said, what? People who've actually got an education?
Yeah, exactly.
Why shouldn't working
And worked
class
hard
people
to
get
get
an education?
And worked hard to get where you are,
Yeah.
definitely.
You know, it's like, if you're working class, and you must be thick.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you must be lazy.
And that's
And in
the
fact-
sadness of it, though, isn't it? That people can think, and I do think a lot of our politicians think like that themselves, don't they? That these people who really don't count, you know?
Yeah.
It's sad, but they don't know what they've missed, is what I would say.
I know.
They don't know what they've missed. I can look back now and think of how hard it was
Yeah.
for my mother initially, and then for my father, and think how did they cope, my aunties, but I don't think it wasn't hard for me,
Yeah.
because I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had I don't think I could have had a better start in
No,
life,
not me.
in a lot
No,
of
me
ways.
definitely
You
not.
know, there are people who've gone further than I have because they didn't have
Yeah.
to come from so far behind.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
How much do you want in life?
Well, you
know?
want enough.
I don't want.
I don't want millions
Fancy
of pounds.
cars.
No, not me. You want enough to live comfortably, to know. That's all I want. I want my children to have enough.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people with money pays for that with their happiness,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And I don't think we did.
No.
I've never thought that middle class people have communities like, how can they?
Yeah,
How
not like
could
ours.
they
Not
have
like ours.
communities?
No.
Because working class people relied on each other.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you may not have, or as my aunties would say, a lot of women smoked then.
Yeah.
They did. It was war years, you know. And I remember one of my aunties saying to me, if one of us had a cigarette, you'd go to a friend's house and smoke it because you'd share it.
Yeah.
You'd have a puff, she'd have I mean, it's unthinkable now when you'd share a cigarette with someone. But if you needed something for your children, if you
Yeah.
didn't have a potato, or you could knock in. I can now see a middle class person doing that, knocking someone's door and saying, do you want to share my fag? It's not going to happen, is it? You know, not that it's not going to happen now, yeah. But I think, would it ever... I think that there's... I think someone from the middle class would be ashamed to
Yeah.
knock someone's door and say, oh, have you got a tea bag or a bit of sugar?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I got a neighbour who I have knocked and said, lend me a bit of gravy brown there now.
Yeah.
You know, and there's no shame in that to
No,
say.
not
So
at
I
all.
think that they've never lived our life. We've
No.
never lived theirs. Well, I haven't. So I think community to them would be totally different what community is to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's the only way a lot of people survived going back to when I was a child was because there was always someone that you could knock and say, can I, or if you needed someone to watch one of the children, or
And you always took stuff, if you could. If you went to visit someone, do you
You
remember?
always took
You always took something.
yeah, and especially if there was a death, wasn't there?
Oh, you'd
there was
always
a
take
death,
something if it's a death.
You'd go with a carrier bag full of food, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
Tea
and
bag,
tea
sugar,
bags. Always tea,
biscuits.
because they'd have a lot of visitors.
Exactly.
And everyone took something.
Yes,
'cause
and
they
I
were
do think
visitors.
that we are different from other classes, and I will say classes because I definitely think they still exist.
Yeah.
that we are totally different,
Yeah.
and for me, that's what makes us what we are.
Yeah.